Oh yeah, I saw that one. I think Matt was dealing with this one, wasn't he? My question was where did the wood come from? Mortality project?
I don't
Something
know.
else.
We don't. I talked to Phil and Matt. We don't ever tell those people to put it on.
Oh, I got the sense from your email this was attached to that this dude is
Constant complaint. Bought a lot about this big on the corner of 223 and Pauluca, whatever lane. We go up there. Oh, got a hole right. Everything drains down that hole.
sure.
And changed the culvert for him, ran it down the road. Burns on it last year.
But it sounded like he was about that.
I know, that's what I
It's
couldn't
like,
understand either. So we're going to meet and go up
Okay.
there. Look at it. Got those chips. We do any chips? The way it sounds to me, he did. He dug up the water line and cocaine tank. Why's he going to make us fix it? He ain't going to fix it.
I don't know. The more those that come up, the more it's you recognize that people might settle down, but you'll never make it that
We
way.
can't make him.
Yeah.
Hi, Jerry. Woke up alive. They checked me and I ain't got no temperature. Started having to do it there, and I said, it might be high there. Dave coming in? Oh.
Doing do. Maybe next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I do is I'll check it. I'll look into that too because I heard somebody from and I just want to make sure they're really representative of the whole, right? I want to be like one of. Well, the guy, what ended up happening? That's one where the attorney should be going on the guy's foot under the table. Stop it. You're preparing yourself. David. I do. I'd like to be at this. I want to hear that. I do. Wow, wow, wow.
Right. Yes, Chairman, we're ready to go.
Okay, very good. All right, we don't need to do roll call today because we have a full quorum present and accounted for. This meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors is now called to order, and we'll begin with, are there any additions to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman, no additions.
Okay, County Council, would you read closed session in the agenda, please?
Yes, Chairman, you have a closed session for a small closed session for today's meeting. Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. The agency designated representatives are your CAO, Mr. Varney, and Director Alba Gomez. The employee organization is all units, and the unrepresented employees is all classifications, excluding elected officials. Thank you.
Okay, are there any comments on the closed session from the public time? Any public online to comment or on the phone?
No, Mr. Chairman, no public comment.
Okay, seeing none, we'll retire to closed session. Clock back there always fast. No, it's right. The clock's always right.
And
Yeah.
for the proclamation, Ladera Unified School, and it's a power. Maybe brief. I
Oh,
haven't seen
okay.
it yet.
Okay.
So
Hopefully it's brief. Okay. I'm on. Very good. We're back from closed session. County Council, anything to report from closed session?
Chairman, there are no reportable actions from your morning closed session. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're going to open and close in memory of Tom Berryhill. Anyone like to say anything about Tom?
I didn't know he had passed away, but Tom was a great friend. When I'd go up to Sacramento, he would always be there listening, fighting for the Valley, and just a great guy. He had a heart transplant a long time ago.
'01.
Yeah, and just a wonderful guy. Always had a smile on his
Pretty
face.
cheery.
Very
Yeah.
cheery. Yeah. He'll be missed.
Yeah, it's sad. He public servant most of his life, and senator, state senator. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I called him a personal friend because when he first ran the first time, it was the first time I ran in '06. He came to my fundraisers. I did a lot of free hamburgers, elk hamburgers and elk steaks and stuff, on Saturdays.
Right.
He always came up, and I didn't even know him at all, but he's just like us. I mean, he's a people person.
Sure is.
And when I seen that he had passed away, I just, boy, Stanislaus County lost a good man.
Yeah.
He-
His
he cared
assistant
for the
was Shannon
people.
Grove, was it? Worked for him a long time. Yeah, great guy.
You'll be missed.
In our thoughts and prayers. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I have one
ahead.
more. About a month back, I had brought up to keep Michael Howard and his wife Christina and their kids in our prayers. He was battling COVID, and he passed away about a week and a half ago. So he was a great guy out on the ranchos. We used to share his easy up so that I didn't get sunburn on top of my head. He was a fellow redhead too, and he was always watching out for me. So, yeah, young guy, a year older than I.
So we will open and close in the memory of Tom Berryhill and what's the name?
Michael Howard.
Michael Howard. At this time, we'll have Pastor John Purcell from Believers Church will lead us in the invocation, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Sheriff Pogue if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. John? Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Sheriff.
Dave? Yeah, can I say something? Mr. Purcell, your dad's Bill? Oh, well, tell him hi. His birthday was Saturday. He was 92 years old. So I called him and wished him sing happy birthday to him, and I sing pretty good, so. Good. He's a great guy. He was probably getting sick by the time I got done singing, but it was fun, so.
That's very thoughtful, Tom. Thank you.
I just like him. He's
Yeah.
just such a cool guy.
Okay, at this time, we have public comment.
Public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record.
Do we have any public by email, phone, or Skype?
No, not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I got one, Dave.
Yes.
I'm going to have a town hall again. I had one last Thursday, but I'm having another one on the 17th, Zoom. I don't know, we had 40 or 50 people again last week. And then second thing, if you haven't heard, the Mono tribe in North Fork, the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that they can build a casino out here on 99. So we will be seeing some construction and many, many jobs. And we got a 20-year compact with them already. So that's going to be really financially prudent for us. It's going to be neat. So after all these years, I started working on them, helping them back before I was ever elected as supervisor. And it's been over 16 years. So can't wait for it to get going and see what it does for Madera County. Thank you.
Chairman Rogers, Supervisor Stevie McNeil, Madera County Ag Commissioner. I just wanted to give you some information on what Madera County is doing for farm workers right now. We're right in the full swing of harvest, lots of things going on. And before harvest started, there was concern from ag commissioners and ag industry on the availability of N95 masks, which are in great demand by the health professions. And so there's some pesticide products that require that by label. So there was concern on that. So through OES, CDFA, and the governor's office, they were able to secure some masks, which we have been distributing. Now, to start with, there was very strict restrictions on that. It had to be only through the ag commissioner's office in the counties and to employers of ag workers. They have gradually relaxed that some, and we have been giving out both the surgical masks like I'm wearing right now, and we've also been able to give out the N95s. Now, one of the things is when the N95s were first given to us to distribute, it was for pesticide applications only. However, with the smoke condition and harvest going on, the governor expanded that to have it for smoke and for a little broader of the definition of the ag industry. To date, we have distributed over 50,000 of masks, of both the N95 and the surgical type. We will be giving some more out. Just last week, they relaxed the restrictions a little bit more to where we can work with what's called CBOs, community-based organizations. And so we have worked with 5 of those so far, including I did call Maddie Mendez with the CAO, and she has 6 places that she's going to be working on. And so we can get those out, not just through our office now, through the others, but just wanted them to know that California takes a great concern in wanting to preserve the health and safety of our ag workers. And just want to let you know of what we're doing and what Madera County is doing for our farm community.
Thank you, Stevie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's good.
50,000. Stevie, I got a letter on the 20th from the state about the carcass emergency. Is that kind of went over now from all the dead cows and stuff?
Which emergency?
Huh?
Which emergency was that?
For the carcass. for the dead cows and the dairies
Okay,
and stuff on the heat
okay.
wave we had. Have we got over that, or, I mean?
Yes. Fortunately, in the past, since I've been here, it just has not been a huge problem in Madera County. I think it has a lot to do with how the dairies here are set up and their environmental controls. But over the years, and I think the last one that we had that was a little hotter was 2017, and even prior to that. And basically, Madera County, whenever this happens, we do a telephone poll to all of our dairy people and cattle people. And it's just kind of like, no, everything's just the same as usual. I contacted the landfill, and he said maybe, possibly, they might be looking at a 5% uptick, but he didn't think so. And one thing I wanted to say is that, and I don't know if I'm going to run past my 3 minutes here.
Different question.
You had a question asked.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyway, in some counties, you may have seen where the Board of Supervisors was making emergency declarations. We don't have to do that here.
So we already
And-
have something in place.
Yes, we have something in place, and I've talked to the person at Caglia who's going to get me a copy of it. But it's a 5-year agreement with the Department of Water Resources and Cal Recycle, to where it allows Madera County to take these carcasses to the landfill. And so whenever, the state vet, Dr. Jones, declares an emergency, that's in place, don't have to do the other, and which is, I think, extremely smart, seamless, right through. And in some counties where you have to get the board together, do the emergency declaration, come back and ratify it so many days later. Anyway, it just goes through smoothly. And I've been in touch with the landfill and again with our dairy farmers, and just really hasn't been anything more than usual here.
Want to make sure we didn't get overloaded out there.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Mr. Baldwin.
Hey, Baldwin. The mic.
Mike's on.
There's a button there.
Okay, sorry.
Now I can hear you.
Let me comment on two things that were raised. I wasn't coming here for that reason, but the first one has to do with the casino mentioned by Supervisor Wheeler. I think oftentimes there's an assumption that when there's a project here in town that in fact that the jobs go to locals. In fact, they don't. And a lot of you know about the veteran housing that's being built downtown on Fifth and I guess Fifth and C Street or whatever, right? And that in the CBA itself, because now actually it's not owned by the city, but actually is owned by a development company. In fact, there are probably practically no jobs that goes to locals. And we need to be aware of that, because if you look at almost all the major infrastructure works often because, it's state money is requiring prevailing wage. It's easier to go to the unions, nothing wrong with that. But there are other jobs associated with that, like the jobs with the subcontractors and all that. And we shouldn't just assume that there are going to be jobs locally. We knew that just from the women's prison that expanded to the other sector. There are almost none of the jobs whatsoever went to local people.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we got it in our compact. We actually have it in there. I think it's 60%. They have to have local Madera County.
Oh, that's great. I wasn't aware of that.
We put it
so-
in the MOU and we done it.
Okay, that's wonderful. I didn't know that. I just know that oftentimes
I
it,
want to make sure
it
it's
kind of looks
clear
over.
because people
Yes.
need to know that. So.
The other thing is from the previous speaker. I think there needs to be a bit of because we're a farm worker legal services, we know that it's good that they wear masks when they're out in the field, but oftentimes when they're traveling to and from in the vans in a closed area, in fact, they don't. And so there needs to be a bit of education with the farm workers themselves that, yes, it's nice when they're out in the field, they're wearing a mask, but when they travel home, whatever, they're exposed. And they need to be reminded of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No one coming forward. We'll close public comment. Move to the consent calendar. Any questions on the consent calendar?
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yeah.
go back to public comment just for a moment? In response to Mr. Moy's concern, which is a very valid one, your public health director will be bringing an item to you on Tuesday, the 8th, specifically related to an advanced outreach to farm workers. And hopefully both the infield and the transportational side of that will be handled, and it's a fairly robust program that's scheduled out for the next 6 to 18 months.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. Okay, Tom,
Yeah, the first one's in item B, that for the auditor controller for their thing, we've had that since 2018. I don't know if anybody's here from the auditor controller that speak on it. There she is.
you say B? B as in boy?
Boy, yes, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Morning. Catherine from the
We've had
auditor.
this system since 2018, it says on the background backup, and now it's one solution. Anything happened between now and then, or we always had this company working, or because it don't say it's a new I mean, it's not an old contract or
For
renewed.
one solution?
Huh?
Oh, I don't know what's on there for one solution. I came from the property taxes.
No, this is on one solution in the auditor controller to look at the to oversee what's going on with the one solution. And they signed the contract in April of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering what's happened between then and now. All of a sudden, we need somebody to help us.
Okay. I don't have that information.
Okay.
This
I can-
deals with software on the.
Right, I can probably answer that if you
Go
like,
ahead,
Mr. Chairman. So this appears to be the ongoing software maintenance and support agreement for Central Square Technologies, which supports one solution, which is your auditor controller software to track all of the spending and everything that we do. So it looks like it's an annual renewal of a fairly standard software.
I didn't see that when it was annual, so
Okay.
I tried to find that and I couldn't see it. So.
Okay.
But anyway, that's, and then.
Yeah, it's on the back up here, Supervisor Wheeler. I think it has to do with annual access subscription and the actual cloud hosting costs of the Central Square product.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Then item I,
Did you have something else, Jay?
item I.
Item I?
Yeah. That's what oh, this is our first one on that road construction. I wanted to say thank you. First really good one that's going out on it, right?
Yeah. Good morning, Supervisor Wheeler, members of the board, Jared Carter, Public Works. This project is, this actually is a project down here in the valley next to the college, improving a portion of the road that runs parallel on the west side of the college. It's a,
Where all the kids park along that.
Oh, yeah,
road
well,
on
that's
the
it.
side.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
yeah, so we
Oh, there was-
programmed funds for this project quite some time ago, CMAQ funds, air quality funds to improve the dirt shoulder and also install some sidewalk, extend that north. And so as part of this project, we've also put some of our Formula SB1 funds and a little bit of Measure T to go ahead and rehab that whole section of road and
Put
make a full
sidewalks too?
improvement. What's that?
Put some sidewalks in?
Yeah, the sidewalk will be on the east side along the college.
It's a great idea because they park in the dirt over there.
Correct.
I think that's great. So I wanted to thank you guys for doing this. I just finally gonna get some of these going. I know we got some more
Yep.
coming later and
Yeah, we're actually
We got
opening
some
bids on
bids
a
out.
couple project this week and next week also.
thank you. Thank you.
Max has a question on that.
Jared, you should follow up on that. We need from the school over there, Susie Chavez, a bicycle route through there. I
Okay.
know we have that creek going through there, but I mean, that would be a perfect place for a bicycle path through there.
You're talking from across the creek on the low water crossing
Yes, of
out
course.
to the college?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can look at that. I'm pretty sure
Well,
we,
that's all we've been doing, looking at, but I mean, the point is that if we encourage people to ride bicycles to, in this case, at junior college, that'd be a great project for us.
sure. We'll definitely continue to look at how we can make something like that happen.
Talk to our grant writer Kristen about looking
Sure.
into a grant for that.
Yeah,
Those are always available. So,
got it.
Very good. Any other questions?
Yeah, just L on the treasurer tax on that, discharging those, low fees and stuff that we charge, you know. I would, if all together, we're gonna just charge about $400,000. I was just wondering if Tracy and them always, do they ever get a hold of people, other people that might know these people that this is happening to, so that we can, maybe some of us know them or something? But there's no list, there's usually a list on some of these, so. Got two of them coming up.
Yeah,
Good,
we're going to tag team it today. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So the amount of property taxes that were unsecured property taxes that we're requesting to discharge this year is $260,000. So these are on parcels that are 10 years that are delinquent,
Right.
10 years or longer, and we can no longer enforce any of our regular collections activities that we usually do after 3 years that expires. What we do is we continue to collect on the parcels if they decide to pay them, and we do various research on various software applications that we have to kind of skip trace and locate these individuals. A lot of times these are businesses that have closed, gone bankrupt, or have been removed.
I've seen that, it said
Yeah.
it was closed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, when it gets, you know, a couple of years, 3 years, if you could give the board maybe just a list of the people that, businesses that we
Okay.
might just, well.
In case you may know.
We might know them, and we could talk to them and say, hey, you might as well do this or not, because they're gone.
Yeah, definitely.
They're under. I mean, some of these been on there 10 years, so.
Yeah,
That's all.
definitely. Perfect.
Good job.
Great, thank you. You guys have a great day.
Okay, any questions from the public?
Move to approve the consent
Motion made.
calendar.
Second.
Motion made in second, let's vote.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Porches?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
We haven't been able to do that in a long time.
Very good.
Put it on here.
Okay, public session, 6A.
6A, Behavioral Health Services Department proclamation proclaiming September 2020 as Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas in the United States, one person dies by suicide every 12.8 minutes, with 47,173 deaths by suicide in our country during 2017. Whereas in our country, suicide is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds and is the 10th leading cause of death for people of all ages. Whereas more people die in Madera by suicide than homicide. Whereas in 2019, 22 Maderans died by suicide, and each had several friends and family members whose lives will forever be changed by the loss of their loved ones. Whereas many of these people who died suffered the stigma of having mental illness. In addition, the surviving family members underwent the stigma associated with losing a loved one to suicide. Whereas in these challenging times, messages of hope and healing are more needed than ever. And whereas Madera County Behavioral Health Services and the Suicide Prevention Collaborative of Madera County encourages all residents to recognize suicide as a significant community health problem. Support accessible behavioral health services for all residents, reduce stigma and discrimination for those who have mental illness, and encourage people who are struggling with mental illnesses to seek help. Whereas far too many people die by suicide each year, and most, if not all of these deaths are preventable. Therefore, the Madera County Board of Supervisors, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the laws of Madera County of California, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2020 as Suicide Prevention Month and call upon its residents, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, hospitals, and schools to observe and learn how they can help, because suicide prevention is everyone's business.
Thank you, Chairman and Supervisors. Julie Morgan, Assistant Director of Madera County Behavioral Health. This proclamation provides us an opportunity to talk to you today about the Suicide Prevention Collaboration, which is headed by the Behavioral Health Department, Public Health Department, Madera Unified School Districts, and Camarena Health, but is supported by so many other community-based organizations, our local health plans, law enforcement, and county school districts. I have with me today Rosalba Serrano Rivera from Camarena Health and Dr. Rebecca Malmo from the Madera Unified School District, who'd like to tell you a little bit about the Suicide Collaborative. We'd like to thank them for the hard work they do every day to make our community healthier.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morgan. And thank you, gentlemen. Chairman Rogers, board members, it is a pleasure to be here with you. And I want to, on behalf of the collaborative, thank you for your proclamation as September 2020 Suicide Awareness Month. I have a brief, I promise, brief presentation for you. And it's really just the who, what, where, when, and why of the collaborative.
So our mission statement, as you can see, is to support prevention, intervention, postvention, with the goal of reducing suicide and promoting community wellness. Our purpose is aligned here, and I encourage you to read that on your own. But essentially, you can see it's alignment, awareness, and education. As Ms. Morgan mentioned, there are a number of local organizations that have been in support of this effort. And while this is a generic blanket for them all, we've been very blessed to have so much support, and including from members of your board. So thank you for that. These are some of our activities. These are specifically occurring right now because September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month worldwide. You can take a look at some of the things we have going on. A very brief history. In 2018, one of our local Madera County crisis counselors came to a number of us and asked us to consider a suicide prevention collaborative in Madera County. Once we looked at the success of regional county efforts in this area, we decided we would try and pull some folks together and see if there was any interest. And lo and behold, a grassroots effort emerged. And that really has carried us through 2019 and now to 2020. We've had great success with grant funds, which have supported a lot of our efforts. And some of us will be back before you in a couple of weeks to share some of that good news as well. It is always important to look at the suicide trends. This information is from our Madera County Behavioral Health Department. So you can see, yes, that is just Madera. So you can see that the trend, while it decreased initially a few years ago, has been inconsistent, but generally on the rise again. And then lastly, I would welcome any questions.
I didn't catch your name when you first.
I'm Rebecca Melmo. I work for Madera Unified.
Rebecca, the question is, at what age do they have a tendency to do this drastic act, suicide? Do you have numbers on that?
Yes, I can give you general data on that. The most common suicide in Madera County is a white male over 40. In terms of our youth, and that's from 10 to 24, it is the second highest cause of death. Now that is nationwide. Fortunately, we don't have recent local data.
Supervisor Frazier. Yeah, I know a lot of this sparked, there was a huge rise in 5150s at the high schools, and we started talking about this. And as a parent of 4 young children, I think mental health is talked about a lot more with the kids. They're able to share that more now, but it also gives them more of an inventory of their feelings. And so being able to help get the awareness, before it was, you're not supposed to ever ask them if they're suicidal or if they want to hurt themselves, because you think that that's going to push them over the edge, which is the opposite, right? It allows that a new conversation to be able to go get the help that you need, so that, because they're going to do it on their own if they're going to do it. You're not going to push them over the edge. And so this is a hard topic to be brought into and be a part of, but it's so important. And if we just all act like it's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen to anybody that we love, that's going to put us all in a bad place. And I just appreciate all the work that this collaborative is doing, working together to share, and because we all are dealing with the same people. These are all our people, and I just love when we get together and actually start doing things and to help protect our children and the citizens of Madera. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. That was absolutely perfectly on point.
Thank you for the presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Good morning, board members. I'm Rosalba Serrano, and I am the Director of Behavioral Health for Camarena Health. And we are also an active member and participant of the Madera County Collaborative. And I want to thank you today for your proclamation of September being Suicide Prevention Awareness, and also for our ongoing efforts on reducing suicide and providing awareness to our Madera County residents. And so that includes all Chowchilla, Oakers, Coarse and so it's definitely been a journey. And again, how Dr. Malmo mentioned, we are very pleased in seeing all the agencies within Madera County coming together in these efforts. Thank you.
How are we doing the presentation on? Yes, we got two more speakers. One more person? Okay.
I know I'm short, but I didn't think I was unseen.
You can pull it
down. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. My name is Christine Doss, and I'm the Health and Wellness Director for Madera Unified School District. I'm new to the collaborative, and I just want to say thank you for making this month and making this proclamation. It has never been more important than this year in the middle of a pandemic, and knowing that many lives are at risk this year. We're already seeing a spike in suicide. So it's really important for us to push forward and keep the message out there. Like you said, we've got to talk about it. We can't just not talk about it because, well, it's taboo and what about and what if. So thank you for saying that. I totally appreciate it. And I thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Are we going to give this to someone? Let's have all the.
We'll stand back here. We stand back here.
Go down, get on the side. That work? Yeah. Eddie? We're good. Get in there, Rob. Yeah. Thank you, girls, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts, Dr. Malmo.
Uh, 5B, Human Resources Department. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution appointing Karen Pogue as Madera County's Chief Clerk of the Board of Supervisors effective September 1, 2020.
Good morning, members of the board. Elba Gomez with.
Hold up. Mr. Chairman, before the next item is on the agenda, I would like to announce that I will recuse myself from discussing and voting on this next item because I am related to Karen Pogue. She is my daughter. I ask that the board's minutes reflect my decision not to participate. I have abstained from all board discussion related to this matter. With that, I will excuse myself from the chambers for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rodriguez. Okay. We'll wait until he's out. Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning again, Elba Gomez with Human Resources. So this item is to request the appointment of Ms. Karen Pogue to the position of Chief Clerk of the Board of Supervisors effective today. Ms. Pogue has leadership experience spanning over 15 years and is knowledgeable of business operations and customer service principles. Ms. Pogue's experience also includes financial and record-keeping processes that will be beneficial to the county. Ms. Pogue also has a bachelor's degree in marketing and is here already, sitting at the table and ready for you to have any questions of her.
Anybody want to ask her any questions?
We asked him in the interview.
Yeah, we
We want her to get up and talk.
We asked her a lot of questions in the interview, and I want to say that Madera County always strives to select the best people, the people that are most qualified for the positions that are available. And we have done that in this case as well. So we're glad to have you here. Thank you very much. And thank you for accepting the position. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Public comment?
Big shoes to fill.
Is there any public comment on the item? No one from the public here? Okay.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion made and second. Let's vote.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Rogers?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0, 1 abstained.
Okay, thank you. Welcome aboard. We're following a long line of great tradition of excellence from the clerk's office there. We have some excellent clerks, and Rhonda's been a great person for this office, and appreciate it.
Appreciate
Been
everything
very helpful.
you've ever done for me. You brought me into this world, and hopefully you can help take me out of it. Thank you, Rhonda, for everything.
Board world.
You know, as chairman, you work closest with the clerk of the board through your chairmanship, and all the people that have chaired know that. And Rhonda, you've been super helpful to me. I appreciate the notes, the communication. All those things are very important, and I want you to know it's been a great opportunity to get closer to you, even though we've been friends for 30 years. So I appreciate everything we've done together. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Look forward to working with you, Karen. Thank you. All right. Next item, 6C.
Did we want to bring Supervisor Rodriguez back?
Yes.
Oh, I guess we have to.
Come back, boss. Welcome back. Item 6C.
6C, Human Resources Department, discussion and consideration of approval of an employee emergency telework policy for the County of Madera.
Good morning again, Alba Gomez with Human Resources. So this policy was previously brought to you in April and was approved by the board. What we're bringing to you now is a revision of the policy, small changes. That before we move forward with the changes, there was a revision that was made after the agenda was posted. I believe that you should have copies in front of you or were provided to the chief clerk of the board. So basically, this policy allows employees to telework from home for a variety of reasons. It could be because of childcare issues, but the policy is specific to COVID-19. So it's addressing any of the concerns that we have from employees that do not have childcare or are taking care of any of their children or home family members that need care because of COVID. So the small changes that you will see are in page 2, subsection under telework agreement, subsection 2. And the change that was made after the board agenda was published was under the employee emergency telework agreement on page 5 under paragraph 2, which we added, I understand and agree that the ETA is voluntary and may be terminated at any time with reasonable notice.
Okay. Thank you for that information. I'd like to just state for the record that telework is not just an emergency circumstance. It's the future of much of the work that we do. Many physicians in Madera County are going to be working through telework in the future. And I think that developing these policies now as we go along the way is a prudent and austere measure. It's going to be something that we're going to expand in the future, and it'll enable us to cease to continue to try to keep up with the demand of building spaces for bodies. And I think that it's definitely the wave of the future and the wave of the present now. So thank you for that, and thank you for the good work in this.
Yes. I do want to mention one more thing that some of the changes that came after the fact was we had some comments back from the union. And so we made some of those changes to kind of build that relationship with them and have those modifications added to the policy.
Right. Thank you for your good work in that area. Yep. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public, comments from the public? No comments from the public, we'll bring it back to the board.
Move to approve.
Motion made. Second. Motion made and second. Let's vote.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Chairman Rogers?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Item 6D.
6D, Human Resources Department, discussion and consideration of approval of the COVID-19 employee leave policy for the County of Madera.
Thank you, members of the board. Elba Gomez again with Human Resources. So again, this policy was previously approved by the board in April, and we are bringing to you some revisions because of changes that are constantly happening with COVID-19. The revisions also there were some revisions also made after the policy was posted with the agenda. Those revisions are under the first page, section 3. We made some modifications to clarify what approved leave was. Again, this came as a concern from the union, and we're making those modifications. The other changes that are in the policy are really to address specific changes in labor, Department of Labor, and suggestions that they made on what we should be asking our employees when they're taking this type of leave.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? If not, any comments, questions from the public? Hearing none?
Move to approve.
Made.
Second.
Motion made and second. Let's vote.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yep.
Chairman Rogers?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
6E.
6E, Community and Economic Development Department, Planning Division. Presentation by Cosmont and Associates regarding opportunity zones and economic development opportunities.
Okay. On their way.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jamie Bax with the Planning Division. We have a team of gentlemen from Cosmont and Associates online with us who are going to be making a presentation. I believe you have it before you. And at the end, we're more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Proceed.
Hi, good morning. This is Larry Cosmont. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chair, members of the board. On behalf of Cosmont Companies, my name is Larry Cosmont. I also have Joseph Villegas and Robert Valente, who are part of the Cosmont team. Joe will share some of this presentation with me. This is a PowerPoint. It's about 11 slides. I'll move through it very quickly in being respectful of your time. So you may recall that we came up, Cosmont came up about a year ago to discuss economic development priorities with Madera County and your staff and yourself, and also the 2 other cities in the county were in attendance. One of the items that we chatted about was of course, the Opportunity Zone program that was approved by the feds. Next slide, by the federal government. And the Opportunity Zone Economic Development Initiative is something that is available to counties and cities that have achieved Opportunity Zone designation. And you have 5 such designations in your county. There are 57 counties in California that receive them. There are about 8,000 districts, tax districts in the United States, with about almost 900 in California. So you have a pretty good share of the opportunity zones. And the compelling reason or purpose for opportunity zones is to enable tax investors to sell a property or investment, which could be anything from a coin collection to a piece of property or a business, and move the capital gains into any investment, whether it's a business or a property, into the pre-designated opportunity zones. So this is a way to attract private investment very significantly. Next slide. So this shows you the landscape. One of the opportunities we have with OZs, I'll call them OZs for short, is that we can combine them with other tools. So it's not just a simple discussion of OZs, it's how can we position our opportunity zones in Madera County using all of our tools, zoning and other tools, other financing tools, to attract private investment, create jobs. Next slide. So here's the the strength of the Opportunity Zone, which is not a perfect program, but it's a very unique one. It says, look, if you're an individual and you've recently sold stock, which we've seen a lot of in the last couple of months because of COVID, there's been a lot of capital gains achieved recently in the market. You can take those capital gains and invest in certain areas that were pre-designated. Now, in order to induce that investment, timing is critical. So right now, in order to get one of the primary benefits, which I'll show you in a minute, you really need to invest by 2021. Now, the good news is by the end of 2021, which means this puts this on center stage for all of us in Madera. And there's competition for these investors because there's literally billions of dollars that have been raised. I'll show you that also in a couple of slides. And so the competition is high. So the question is, one, do you want to, as a county, get into the Opportunity Zone business, if you will, from a policy perspective, because this is private sector activity. This is not a program that the government, that local government controls. It's a federally induced program that is really meant to entice tax investors to move money to areas that have not received the kind of investment that some of the more primary investment areas have received. They can be used as part of an economic development strategy, which is what we're talking to you about, to create jobs and activity. They can also be used for housing or industrial or commercial. There's essentially no limitation on the type of businesses or properties that can be developed other than a couple of sin businesses, which I'll show you. See, next slide. Something weird just came up. Okay, next slide, please. So in a nutshell, it's like any tax program. These tend to be a bit complicated, and they're very nuanced to a specific investment. Every investment has their own timing issues and financial issues. So the reality is the application of this is easier than the explanation, which, by the way, isn't that easy either. But point one is you get a tax deferral if you reinvest those gains I talked about from the sale of a business or a property. And you can defer that tax that's usually due right away. The capital gains tax is usually due. Well, you can defer that. I'm getting some shifting in the slides here. We get back to that slide if possible. Sorry about that. There we go. Oh, I think we have a little bit of a delay is what's happening. So you can defer that gain for up to, can I go back to the last slide? For up to 5 years if you invest by 2021. And as part of the deferral, you also get what we call a basis increase. So while Bobby is trying to figure out the slide situation, let me explain part two. If you make that investment from a capital gain and defer the tax, you get this bonus of 10% in a basis uptick, which means that when you pay the tax, you pay on 10%, you pay 10% less tax because you've gotten a bonus from the basis uptick. So that's one of the benefits of that program. And one of the reasons that that exists is to induce these investments, over time. Should I try and share my screen? Would that be better? Or, okay, here, it looks like we're booting up. The third benefit is the most important benefit. And by the way, the slideshow is really testing my knowledge, so I'm hoping I'm keeping up with it. The third benefit is what we call the permanent exclusion, and that's the beauty of these opportunity zones, and that is you get a total exemption from any and all capital gains if you hold on to that investment for 10 years. So let me just summarize, as I know it's been a little bit disturbing or distracting having this move around. You defer the tax. If you do it by 2021, you get a 5-year basis increase, which reduces the tax when it's due. And if you keep the investment for 10 years, voila, you are tax exempt. Pretty compelling. Now, next slide. The key is the other additional benefit is that it can be applied to property tax, to real property investments, as long as you make substantial improvements within a 30-month period. But there's been some extension in recent changes of the law which helps California, because if you have, let's say, 54 months and you have to go through a CEQA process, it gives us a lot more time. So it can be invested in real property or in business properties on the right. So that means small businesses, medium-sized businesses, real property, hotel, residential, commercial housing. The limitation on the business type on the right is no sin business, racetracks, gaming, massage, liquor store, and some other. Now, the beauty of investing in an OZ in a COVID environment is that there have been some extension in the working capital safe harbor period that takes it out to 62 months, which means that investors taking tax gains in this year could actually park their money in an opportunity zone fund and not make a decision on a specific investment for up to 62 months. They can still be eligible for the deferral and for that full tax exemption, but they get to park the money. The reason I'm bringing that up now is we're going to show you a program that we think would help the county entice the investors for opportunity zone projects by using this extended time period. So next slide. So the part of the regulatory update has come because of COVID. I've really already covered this point. The point is that we now have extension of working capital exceptions. We have the reinvestment deadline from 180 days to additional time extended through December 31, 2020. So again, this whole law was really meant to induce investment quickly. COVID comes along. It changes the snapshot of time immediately. And so the response has been to give these investors more time, which helps us, which is why we're able to propose what we call the parking lot program, which we'll show you in a couple of slides. Next slide. So the most important thing in terms of this conversation from my perspective is, look, if you make the decision that you really want to be in the opportunity zone policy business, that policy business really relies on attracting investors. It's not worth it if there aren't investors. As of this morning, Novogradac reports there are now $12.05 billion, not 10 billion, but over 12 billion of reported equity raises across 600 funds, and that California is the leader of all the states in accumulating equity in these investment funds. So the message there is that those investors are out there. Now, here's the other message. The reality is many of them are on the sideline because we're in this really uncertain time as to where the values are for various real estate products and businesses. So that combination of lots of money waiting on the sideline and the extended time frame that I just showed you really enables counties and cities, counties like Madera, to figure out a way to be in the market and attract those funds to the county. And we'll show you that in a little bit. Next slide. There was a bill, SB 25, that didn't quite get pursued to completion. It's been a very unusual legislative session that would have improved some CEQA streamlining and added some other dimensions for opportunity zones. The only reason I have the slide here is because it's just recently that bill was pulled by Senator Caballero. It's worth us paying attention to this bill if it comes back next year, because it could help Madera County, because it is very focused on District 12, which includes most of Madera County. So it's a real advantage to us if we can get it the way we want to. I don't think it was quite the way we would have wanted it, but the fact that the senator is willing to promote it means that they would be open to chatting about it with us. So if you decide to move forward on some of the policy considerations today, one of the recommendations would be, let's talk to the senator and see if we can improve this bill next year, because it would advance our opportunity. Next slide. So bottom line is that if you take the tools available to the county of Madera, things like EIFDs or tax increment districts, you combine them with OZs, you really can have a very compelling package to promote and attract new money to the county. Next slide. So Joe Diegas is going to go through the specific areas that you could think about putting this compelling OZ strategy to work, and then I'm going to come back and review with you what I call the parking lot strategy, which is something that we are recommending for your consideration to pursue, because I think it could put you in the market very competitively to get some of that $12 billion of the OZ investment fund that's been pledged and looking for deals as we speak. Joe?
Thanks, Larry. Hello, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So we've had the privilege of spending a lot of time with staff reviewing our OZ areas within the county. In very broad terms, when we're talking about OZ areas, we're talking about the Chowchilla area, number one in the northwest. Both sides of the 99, we're calling Madera West and Madera Northeast, numbers 2 and 3 respectively. Downtown, area 4 here on the map, and a northeastern county, which we'll go into in a bit more detail here, and just noting for reference where there are some existing EIFDs that we're not really speaking about today. Next slide, please. So as I said, we've had the opportunity to go in a good amount of detail here. I'll go through a little bit more about the specific targeted projects and some of the opportunities, the corresponding key stakeholders in a bit more detail, and then Larry will come back and talk to you, as he said, about actual potential structures for county involvement that can really apply to all of these. Village D is this area, 2,700 acres northwest of City of Madera master plan community. We expect it to be annexed to the City of Madera within a year or so. What we see here is an opportunity for county-city developer partnership to address infrastructure needs via OZ and complementary tools. Specifically on OZ, what we see is a potential opportunity of meeting with the developer, sharing the public agency and Cosmont perspective on the OZ program, its benefits, all with the potential to improve financial feasibility and create capacity, potentially for funding these critical infrastructure improvements, as well as community benefits. Northeastern County, we went into a lot of detail with staff, areas like Oakhurst, Bass Lake, Bright Ranch areas, Highway 49, Highway 41, areas that include, like in the Bright Ranch case, proposed community college, the design stage, some apartment developments nearby, Bass Lake Resort area activity. Some of the common themes we're seeing here are heavily wooded areas in need of fire breaks, circulation improvements, other supporting infrastructure. And what we see is an opportunity for county leadership and potential developer partnerships to address these infrastructure needs and facilitate private development, primarily via OZ and special districts. Again, Larry will talk about structures. Continuing down the line, key Highway 99 interchanges, we talked about Avenue 7 and 9, Avenue 18 and a half, and 99 is the one in OZ. We see Avenue 7 and 9 have some nearer term development potential. Those are not the ones in the OZ. Avenue 18 and a half, we see longer term, but it is in the OZ. And what we see is the potential for either a county only or county city OZ and special district partnership, given the potential connections to City of Madera water and sewer infrastructure. Again, though, with the goal being facilitating development and addressing critical infrastructure that needs to be resolved for that to happen. In the Chowchilla areas, the northwestern region of the county, we looked at intersections like 152 and 99, a largely industrial area, 152 and 233, an area where a commercial project has recently been approved. The opportunity we see is not only county, city, but also potential high-speed rail partnership to facilitate growth and create infrastructure connectivity to underserved communities such as Fairmead, again, utilizing OZ and special districts as the mechanism. Letter E, downtown, we've discussed with staff the interest of developing a community performing arts center in the downtown OZ area, as well as facilitating other OZ developments with the corresponding infrastructure. We consider it a little bit of a longer term opportunity compared to projects like Village D or Castellina, the next one, but still a priority as it relates to OZ. And letter F, beginning with Castellina and the others, we've gone into, again, a lot of detail with staff on letters F through H. mostly dealing with other tools like special districts, less so than OZ opportunity zones, because these are areas that are only partially or not in opportunity zone areas at all. But just at a high level, applying to all of these FG&H, we're talking about common themes, potential multi-jurisdictional partnerships between county, city, and other public and private agencies like high-speed rail for State Center, private developers for Castellina and along SR 41 corridor. We can go into more details on these if you wish, members of the board. But you know, all of these have some level of overlap. There are some specific needs and goals, and certainly certain specific stakeholders that need to be engaged on a targeted basis to push the ball forward, which is part of why we'll come back to that as a part of suggested next steps at the end. For now, I'll pass it back to Larry just to talk about potential structures, and then we'll get to next steps. Thank you.
To a potential program that I think could help you integrate opportunity zones into your toolkit of economic development. The first thing I'd like to say genuinely is that I think the county and the county staff have done an incredible job of staying at the forefront of economic development. They are looking at every possible tool, and this is just one of them. The reason that this is so timely is because, one, it's a recent act out of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It is being shifted and changed with timeframes expanding because of the advent of COVID. And it's an integrated strategy for you. As you heard Joe go through the potential list of projects that you could focus on, much of it is integrated with your other cities, with your two cities, Madera and Chowchilla. So those are real opportunities to take a broad look, an ongoing broad look at economic development and target a specific strategy. That strategy comes out of the current circumstance that we're in. So we call it the Opportunity Zone Fund parking lot. The first notion is that you have, as we've demonstrated, a lot of investor interest. They're placing their money in early funds, 12 billion, half of it is California. They're looking at residential and commercial as well as hotels. So the appetite is there. Okay, but how does COVID affect that? Well, two ways. One is it creates uncertainty. It also creates at some level the potential for devaluation of assets, which really interests, by the way, investors who are opportunistic. The other element is the federal government has seen that there's a need to extend, so the IRS has given an additional period of time, up to 62 months, to really have investors take a look around. I think that really gives you a convergence of facts that make it very opportune to look at a way to, one, market with your cities and yourself collectively, market opportunity zone funds, which we know they exist. There's hundreds of them. And essentially do that by finding some lead investor funds, some lead OZ funds, who could enter into a promotional partnership, if you will, with the county, sort of a branded effort that identifies Madera County with these specific pre-selected funds as the platform for investment, that basically, sorry, let me turn this off, that basically enables those investors to understand what are the priorities, just on that prior page, what are the priorities of Madera County and the cities within Madera County, and how could they insert themselves immediately with public agency support for those opportunities. And the way it works is you basically figure out, with our help, which of those opportunity funds that have already been created, which of them have an investment profile that fits with Madera's vision of infrastructure, housing, mixed use, industrial and commercial development. We see where that match is made, and once we can identify one or two lead funds, we enter into a marketing partnership. I'll tell you what this is not. This is not the county raising money. It's not our purview in the public sector, in our view. It's really what this is a marketing partnership that sets up a series of funds that are already in place and helps them focus on opportunities that are of importance and priority to Madera County. The funds are owned and managed by the Selected Investment OZ funds. The process is very transparent in terms of your input and what you're looking for, both in a promotion partner with funds as well as the projects you want to promote. Those are things you can pre-select and discuss with those funds, and you would only select a fund that was completely on board with furthering investment in those projects because they have qualified investors that already have a philosophy that would match the county's. So it's a collaborative effort between the public and private sector, but the management and the direction of the investment is purely from the private side. The promotion of opportunities is helped and assisted by you, the public sector. And to the extent that you can find legislation that even helps improve the investment opportunity in Madera, you would go ahead and do that. So in a nutshell, it basically says that, yeah, we are thinking that because we have these 5 OZ areas, and because we know there is $12 billion plus in funds out there, and because we understand that the competition for those funds will be intense, and that we also know that investors are looking for certainty, they're looking for local support, they're looking for a profitable investment to take advantage of the opportunity zone components and benefits, we can help that circumstance by entering into a process where we seek out OZ funds that we prefer, we identify a promotion program with those funds, and we see if we can bring that money to Madera County on the basis of that promotion program. And it starts with us first selecting what we really want to put which eggs we want to put our basket into. So in a nutshell, next slide, if you are sort of on board with the OZ as an opportune platform for economic development activity, then you can initiate those conversations as you have at some level with the city, with high-speed rail, with others. You can conduct your technical due diligence in terms of both the projects that you prefer and once you've done that, start to shop OZ investment through qualified funds that we could partner with so that we could actually implement these OZ projects sooner than later and be ahead of the marketplace. I'll stop there and thank you for being patient with the technical difficulty we've had on this presentation. It happens with Zoom or with that WebEx, so we apologize for that. And we're open for questions if you would like to engage in a discussion.
Okay,
Thank you.
We have some people who have joined us by visual and audio e-join or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
I wonder if some of them might have a question. Rod, I know you're with us. Do you have any questions? Anyone at all?
I've got.
Go ahead.
Hi, Larry. It's Brett. In case you can't see my mouth moving.
Hi, Brett. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great.
Good to see you. Great presentation as usual. So I had like some. Actually, I'm glad I don't ask the questions while you're doing the thing because you answered some of them on the next page. I'm learning that as I go. But one of the things, like on, like say on like Village D or Castellina, that's in the Opportunity Zone area. These are housing developments that aren't. I mean, their goal is not as a long-term hold once it gets up and going, right? It wouldn't be 10 years and then the people have their house after that. It's looking to sell it off. So if they had a quaff or the owners of that had a taxable gain, can they put that into their, put in the infrastructure that's needed, sell off those tracts of land to home builders, and then reinvest that in another portion of the development to get to that full 10-year hold?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are, obviously, Cosmont is not a CPA, it's a pretty technical question, but our understanding of the modifications and of the core legislation is that the IRS has clarified reinvestment so that you could start off, as you say, sort of as a land-based capital project and put in infrastructure. There may need to be some private improvement to get your increase in basis, but that could be, that could be, I think there's a request to have us share our faces here. I don't normally get that request, which is why I'm repeating. But there is the ability to roll over, if you will, which is what you're getting at, into another investment. And that could be in the same, a component of the same project, as long as you don't violate the related parties issue. So if you're on both sides of the transaction, you have some limitations as to how to get that done. But in general, there are now ways to do that.
Okay. And then you said like businesses that can be started as well. And do those have like an employment threshold that you have to create so many jobs, or just start a business?
It's really start a business, and it's really using the investment returns from a prior investment to make an investment in this new company. And ultimately, you are going to create jobs, but there's no threshold. The threshold is that you invest within a certain period of time, and that you invest up to a certain percentage so that you qualify for the benefits. In other words, they don't want investors making, sort of illusory investments. They find a company, they put some money in, but they do nothing with it. So there's motivation on the tax side in terms of how much has to be invested in tangible assets, which can be equipment, it can be a building, it can be land, it can be a number of things, product, inventory. So they have to do that within a prescribed period of time, and that, of course, in and of itself will generate jobs. There's just no quotient, if you will, or benchmark for jobs per se. The benchmark is all about infusing actual capital within that business or into that business.
And then that business would have to be located in the opportunity zone, correct?
That's correct, and there's a whole bunch of rules. If they sell outside of the zone, how they count being in the zone as qualifying. They get pretty technical, but that's also an area we've had a lot of clarification. So it's pretty clear that if you're located and your point of business is in that opportunity zone area, that you're going to get the benefits of the opportunity zone tax relief, if you will.
Okay, yeah, and then so they would still pay all their normal business income taxes, all that. It's just when they go to sell the business after 10 years, there would be no capital gains for the sale of that business, correct?
That's right. There'd be no capital gains based on the basis that they would have achieved, the difference between that basis and the sale price after 10 years.
Those are my questions. You had answered the one about, because there was a point in time where this was all anybody was talking about, and then when it was the 15%
right.
cost basis breakdown, but now the 10% is still a good thing, and then it looks like the 62 months to reinvest, so that went up from 6 months to.
Yes, from the 24 to the 62. There's just been an upgrade in the time for things like working capital exclusion and investment periods. Also get pretty technical, but what's happened is there's a recognition that COVID has delayed or sidelined reinvestment. And the perfect confluence of facts is that the stock market's been on fire. So you actually have folks, achieving capital gains, and this is a pretty good time to take a look around at diversifying your portfolio. So that's why I think you're seeing just that Novogradac comment. They're a major CPA that focuses on OZs. I just got that literally an hour before talking to you this morning, where the the fund levels have gone from over 10 billion to over 12, just a 30% increase in the last period of time, 6 months or so, which just shows you that there is interest, right? And there's interest in California. It's just that the specific investments need to be figured out because these investors are still a bit unsure as to whether or not they're buying at the right time, which is why the parking lot scenario that gives them more time to understand the market really becomes compelling. I do want to say to all of you on the board that you would be leading this effort. As far as Cosmont knows, and we advise many public agencies, as you all know, there have been really no public agencies that have pushed forward and been as aggressive as marketing the promotion of OZs in tandem with funds that we know of in this state. We think it's a very straightforward opportunity because you're not raising money. You're not becoming a fiduciary. You're being very clear and transparent as to how you get to the list of projects you promote. But we're also speaking with a number of public agencies that are considering this because they realize that the competition for this funding, while it may be there, is hard to engender the interest. One, because of the lack of clarity in the market, and number two, because there are just so many opportunities to look at. So that's why I think for an area like Madera that's not going to be on the main screen of many of these investors that have always looked at urban areas and certain product types, this is a way to sort of get out in front of the pack and say, we're here, we're open for business. If we're going to be transparent about it, we'll work with you, and let's see what we can get going to the benefit of your investors.
So like on a Village D or a Castellina that had it, so even if for that arm's length transaction where even say the developer that owns the land right now and they sold some stock, can they put that back into theirs right now, or do they have to just go with a QOF, and it's basically a different way of raising money versus taking out a loan to put in that infrastructure?
Well, they'd have the choice. They could do a combination of those things. They could pull that money out. They could put it into the QOF as long as they don't have, again, some of the interested party limitations. But they have that choice. They can do it in combination. That's the beauty. And I think they also could, at this point, take their time in securing their next investment, whether it were related to this project or something else. So it gives them a great amount of flexibility, gives them some time, but it also lets them, position that money so if something pops up, whether it's a follow-on to this project or other projects, they can be on the perch, if you will, to take advantage of the OZ benefits.
Do you know of any like home builders, like national home builders, local home builders that as they're selling out in one development that's not an opportunity zone and they've made quite a bit of profits there, or do you know of any of them that have created a QOF to then come in and invest, take down a chunk of that, of a housing tract?
Yes, we have a couple of projects. One is in the southwest Los Angeles area in San Pedro, where the investor developer has the partner is a union to fund the construction and potential takeout. The equity is coming from other real estate investors who are putting their funds into this QOF, which is there to build an approximately 300 unit residential rental development with some affordable housing. I think it's 10%, it might be 15, I don't recall, and a little bit of retail as well. It's a mixed use project. It's a very sizable project, several $100 million in value. And so that's a good example of how that works. By the way, just across the street, there was another project that we did not work on, but it was in the newspaper for also attracting opportunity zone investors to that residential transaction. So these are all things that, are working throughout the state in terms of real estate transfer, if you will, investors that are in one project moving to an opportunity zone project in another area.
Larry, I just want to again thank you for all of your help on this, getting what I think is a great plan to move forward. You've shared so much knowledge. I feel like I actually understand this after having talked to you quite a few times. I feel like I could utilize these well myself. The only problem I have is I don't have the taxable gains from anywhere. I don't have enough money to do anything with it, but I think we can help other people figure out how to use it now. So thank you.
Supervisor Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Larry, for the presentation. You know, I after taking another look at this opportunity and thinking back on our first meeting back in, well, year and a half ago, whenever it was in Chowchilla, it's definitely something that I think that not only do we need to just, you know, beyond listening to it and say, hey, this sounds nice, I think that we need to really ramp up our efforts to take advantage of the Opportunity Zone initiative and be that leader in the state of California to actually move forward. I think that's not only an exciting prospect, but I think it's critical, and I'll tell you why. Many of you know about the California Forward organization. I think it formed 10, 12 years ago or something, and I think when it first organized, it was very interesting. It sounded like, oh yeah, we want to get this state moving forward economically and in businesses. But I guess the focus of California Forward has changed drastically, and several of us attended the Regions Rise / California Forward conference last November in Fresno. And when you walk away from that, you realize it had nothing to do with any region rising unless your region was called Fresno. It was unbelievable. It was a cheerleading session for Fresno. The governor announced at that conference that he was giving $10 million to Fresno, to nonprofits. If you went down the list, the M word, Madera, was nowhere. It was a travesty, and it was embarrassing, and it was, you know, I felt like, why am I here? What's this about Regions Rise? And I believe it was very politically motivated. So we've got this Regions Rise, we've got this Fresno Drive initiative. Again, nowhere is Madera mentioned, nowhere has Madera been contacted in regards to this, and it's being headed up somewhat by a community foundation that supposedly is to benefit Merced, Fresno, Madera, Tulare, and Kings counties. But again, it's all about Fresno. And it's doesn't have anything to do with our friends of the Board of Supervisors. This is way beyond their political influence. Also, recently, there was a piece of legislation that was introduced by Rudy Salas from Bakersfield, AB 3205. And again, it didn't make it out of appropriations, so it was not voted on. I think we're going to see it again. And but it had everything to do with developing regions to move forward economically. And there were, again, it's organized around foundations. Can you imagine that? You know, how did that happen? So you start to see, you know, what's going on here politically. And I'm afraid, well, Madera's not even being asked to join at the podium or to play. So what we need to do is take aggressive action and move forward with ourselves, with our own county, our own city, and say, okay, if you're not going to invite us to play, that's fine. We've got, you know, our own equipment that we can move forward with. We had a discussion just about a week ago with the director of the MCTC, the EDC, that brought this forward, even before we talked about these opportunity zones, and talked about how critical it was that we move something forward. And I look at something like this, and, you know, I think that we can get our arms around it and develop ourselves economically, because we're not going to get any help from anybody from south of the San Joaquin River. Thank you.
Well said. Supervisor Wheeler.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, for the great presentation. Again, I've seen you once before, and then I in a couple of other ones. So last year, I think this is so important for especially my district up in the mountains. On page 12, you got that infrastructure. So there is money like this guy's got 50-something acres, and he hadn't got enough money to build the apartments, which we really need up there. And we put people together to do that and do the infrastructure. There's no sewer or water there. It's about, I actually measured 0.4 of a mile from where the sewer line quit, and we put it for those 3 new hotels. And the water, I'm not sure where it is. He said he talked to Hillview Water and they wanted $1 million to hook it up. Is there, when we do something like that, will it also help pay for that infrastructure?
Yeah, so these are private projects that benefit from OZs. They're not purely public projects because you need a basis and you need a profit. We're not going to sell that water typically. So this is an example, Mr. Supervisor, where you can put that project, if you will, let's say in a special tax district, and then have the OZ investment available to accelerate that project's investment and use the value of that project to help pay down the water improvements as a reimbursement, for example. It's not perfect. It's not likely to be front-end funding, but it's a way to get through a project gap, blending the benefits of OZ and, let's say, a tax district like EIFD or other tools. That's the best you're going to do under these because, again, the private investment benefits of an OZ are really from the capital gains of a private investment.
Okay, and so if they can't hook up to those, is there money also to put their own septic and water system in?
Yeah, I think some of the private improvements, like their own septic, could be part of the cost of the private project, and that would work. So yes, again, we'd have to dissect it, but my sense is that could be put in the private column, which is what I think you're asking.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly a lot of information that Larry Cosmont and the Cosmont companies presented to the board. I think what I'd like the board and the public who's listening, right, is the way I view one of our major roles as certainly county staff, and what I'd recommend is that we are pushing this forward and trying to get this information out, right? These are, as Larry had said a number of different times, right? These are private funds that are set up. You know, we shouldn't be in that business, but we should be in the business of educating and trying to push forward putting them together. Yeah, some of these different things. So there are funds set up, right, and trying to get marketing and get in front of those and saying, hey, you know, here's some stuff and here's some development. Certainly the arm's length transaction, that is a concern in a lot of cases, right? It's someone looking to purchase and invest into development properties and those things. But really, our main focus, or at least what I would certainly look, is to continue to work with Cosmont companies and simply just make sure we're out there and being a voice and that people know the counties here and know we're open to all sorts of different economic opportunities, and that, you know, we want to see investment of those funds that are that $10-12 billion. We want to see some of those funds able to be invested into the county. But this isn't an aspect of the county investing or the county participating or playing in any of those funds whatsoever. It's simply us marketing the county through EDC and through our shop and working with Larry to make sure we're at the forefront of that aspects.
Okay. Any questions from the public? None?
Yeah, hold on. This is Rod Pruitt with Chowchilla.
Rod, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that Chowchilla would definitely be on board with this type of program. There's quite a bit of property in Chowchilla that's covered by opportunity zones, and any type of tool that we could use to encourage economic development, I would certainly be in favor of. I just want to have one question for Larry. It sounded like when I talked to you previously about this, that you kind of had to have a project ready to go in order to kind of take advantage of it. And it sounds like this model, you don't actually have to have a project ready to go. You're actually going to go out looking for the project. So it's a little bit more, I guess, marketable from that standpoint, as we're identifying needs, like we need infrastructure in our industrial zone, and then we go look for a project that would address that. Is that accurate?
It's close. I would say it slightly differently, and that is, one, you do want to identify those projects that you're willing to support, because investors in OZ funds need to know there's stuff out there that it can be invested in that will gain local support and that makes sense from a market perspective. They'll do the market side of the intelligence, but they still need to know that the city and county and others are there to support investments in infrastructure, processing, and so on. So this is slightly different than when we talked, though, because of the extension in time, where you can get some flexibility is the county can identify its priorities with the city, like Chowchilla in the county, say, okay, these projects are a priority. We can engage a specific fund or two that says they will focus on Madera and those projects we like. And we can help promote those projects by helping the fund explain to their investors that this is going to be a good investor. So it's really good investment. So it's really a two-part process. You identify preferred projects, part one. Part two, you identify preferred funds, and together you promote the projects to the fund's investors. You let the fund take the money. You let the fund make the disclosures. You let the fund do the contractual work. But the front end is co-identified for purposes of promoting public economic development in the county and in your city. So that's the difference. It's a two-parter this time, as opposed to just find a project like it was before.
Okay, thank you for that update. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that we certainly are willing to work together with the county to take advantage of these opportunity zones. So I can reach out with Matt and stay in contact and try and get something set up.
Thank you very much, Rod.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? If not, thank you for the presentation.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Good to have this continuing conversation about opportunity zones. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Okay.
and hopefully more than just conversation.
Yeah.
Boy, that's
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, item 6F.
6F, County Administration Department, discussion and consideration of entering into an agreement with the Madera Coalition for Community Justice in the amount of $549,950 for eviction prevention services for county residents in need for fiscal year 2021, and authorize the chairman or his designee to sign.
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. The item before you today is the first of two agreements that will provide rental or utility assistance to low-income households that were impacted by COVID-19. This agreement will focus on the harder to serve and those folks that are imminent for eviction effective this month. It covers the unincorporated area of the county as a priority, including the city of Chowchilla. However, it excludes the city of Madera, as they will have a similar program in place that provides rental and utility assistance. Mr. Baldwin Moy from Madera Coalition of Community Justice is here for brief comments and is available for questions.
I just personally think it's a good deal that we can do that and help some of these people with these dollars, so.
Good morning again, Baldwin Moy. I'm here on behalf of the Madera Coalition for Community Justice. This is it's very much the same kind of program that was proposed to the city of Madera and was adopted by the city of Madera. This is something that we kind of see happening. I think the law has just changed again last night, and so it's kind of like always in flux. I think what is certain is that regardless of when the court's going to open up, which is actually tomorrow, that I think we would anticipate really an avalanche of evictions, just because from March on, since the state and the city, actually the city in that case, adopted an ordinance, but the state executive order was in place that, for the most part, I think a large number of families did not pay rent. I think there was a lot of confusion in terms of what were the requirements. There was certainly the statements made by the administration in terms of deferral of rent payments, which didn't apply for the most part. It really only applied to federal housing. And so a lot of people who called my office wanted to know whether or not they didn't have to pay rent. Yes, they do have to pay rent. They need to put it aside to the extent that it was caused by COVID-19 in some aspect, whatever. They would have some protection. Since then, the state stepped in after in the city where the ordinance had expired, continued to provide that kind of protection. In that same vein, the court then passed a rule which didn't allow any landlords to file evictions, and then there had to be a certain amount of time when they could serve the summons. But we anticipate that there's going to be a large number of people facing eviction. This is intended to stall some of that, where the program is actually, you can look at it in two parts. One, there's obviously the rental assistance that would be provided. But secondly, that any family coming for the assistance to the Medicare Coalition is also provided with information regarding, one, the legal process for evictions and the latest changes in the law. Secondly, other income replacement programs that are in place that's a little bit dated now, just unless a new stimulus bill passes and the state adopts a similar one, whatever. And then the third, and also related to that, are other employee protections that are available, so that, for example, if you are contracted the virus, unfortunately, there are certain laws that kick in depending on the size of the employer and so on. And so part of this is, one piece of the program is to provide the rental assistance. The other one is also to counsel them in terms of all the options. And let me give you an example. Some of you might have read, well, I think it's coming out in the paper, but it certainly was reported in the news where there was a landlord in the city of Madera that had served his tenants with eviction notices, not based on non-payment of rent, but just based on what he perceived to be his right to terminate tenancy. And so there was a rush to see whether or not to help these people relocate, these families relocate. That's one way of handling it. What this program would do is, one, look at that and be able to determine that, in fact, whatever notice that was provided was illegal, that you could not evict somebody. And so giving them the money really doesn't really help them. In fact, anybody who's familiar with evictions would know that it really is very disruptive. It's a very traumatic experience, in particular in this time of the pandemic, whatever, to all of a sudden uproot a family and then force them to go seek alternative housing, even if you provide them with the additional monies to relocate and all that. There's no money, there's no housing to be had. As many of you know, there has almost been no affordable housing that has been built over the last decade, probably a decade and a half, maybe even longer than that. But additionally, the disruption that it causes to the family, and I'll just complete that by saying, here you have families where school had just started, they just got their Wi-Fi connection for the kids to go to school, they just met the teachers and all of a sudden you say to them, hey, you got to leave. So in this instance, when we were told about this, we told all the tenants that they have additional time, they need to continue to put away the money, whatever, but they don't need to. They will not be evicted because it's illegal, because, some of you are familiar with the law that was passed at the end of last year that went into effect this year, which requires just cause, meaning that you can only evict a tenant who's current in their rent payment only for certain reasons, and they're very limited in terms of those reasons. So the program is not strictly kind of like what people sometimes think is a kind of like a rent voucher program, something of that nature. It's really to look at all their rights and see what is the best option for them, and to kind of optimize those opportunities for them. So that's what this program is. It is to cover the entire county, exclusive of the city of Madera and Chowchilla. Had a conversation. Chowchilla, they were not available to. They were not eligible to apply for the monies, but I think we also had a conversation with Mr. Traber that when the money runs out for the city, they have much smaller amount of money, but they also have the largest number of renters that then maybe we would then open up for also city renters as well. I mean, so the program provides up to, there's a protocol set up that provides up to a certain amount of money. And then we looked at some other consideration. For example, can it come up with matching money? Is this one where they're so far behind that even if you pay the landlord money, that it wouldn't stave off the eviction, just because if you had stopped paying it in March and now we're into October, whatever, well, you owe 7 months of rent. It wouldn't be prudent use of the money to go ahead and pay 7 months of, let's say, $7,000 or something. The better option may very well be to help them, give them a first and last, and move them to new housing, and then deal with that later on in terms of, once they get evicted, whatever. So anyway, that's what the program is, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, so I think this is a great place to have this. I know we had a lot of pressure at the time to jump on the no evictions.
Mm-hmm.
And what's coming to pass is exactly what I had foreseen, which was stop paying rent, and then if you couldn't afford it then, probably 6-7 months worth of non-payment of rent. So until we had something where there's real dollars behind it where we could help those tenants, then, this is where I think it needed to be, like at the beginning. We didn't have the money. There hadn't been the stimulus that had come out to us yet. And so very happy to be able to put this money behind that. And I think it's a great place to get it out. We just need to make sure that this money gets out there so that they can stay in and don't continue to get behind. This stimulus money turns over, 2 to 3 times, right? It goes to the tenant, they're able to stay in their place. It goes to the landlord's able to make their mortgage payment. It gets to the bank, so no one's behind, and we don't have, some of the only affordable housing that we have in default, sitting there bank owned, not even allowing people to live in those areas. So I'm happy to see this. I'd like to just have updates of how much of it's going out, how many people are coming in, and then like what kind of marketing efforts that we're doing to get it out there to allow people to know how to go and ask for it and get this money to help them stay in their houses. So I'm glad to see you're in charge of it, and I know you'll get it out to the people that need it.
But just so you know that we're provided the county with a kind of like a reporting, and it could be on a monthly basis, whatever, where they would know how many applications come in. I could tell you right now that in the entire Madera County, that even without the program had been approved, although the city has approved the program, that the coalition currently has over 100 families that have applied. And once again, it's not simply just anybody coming in asking for money, whatever. We kind of review their entire situation to see whether or not how best to spend money. If you look at it, sounds like a lot of money, whatever, but average rent is about $1,000. So if you're 5 months behind, it'll accommodate 100 families. And that would exhaust all the money almost.
Yeah.
Right. And along with that has to be the utilities payment as well. The coalition works on a number of them, but also the action committee has several also. So it's to take advantage of all the different programs. And the last thing I forgot to mention is that the coalition also has a would be working with, kind of like new immigrants, because oftentimes they don't know what their rights are, so there's also a special informational sheet that's given to new immigrants where they understand, not just that there's this program, but all the other programs in various areas that are available to them, whether it's housing, whether it's utilities, whether it's health care or whatever.
Okay, any questions from the public on this item? If not, I'll bring it back to the board.
Thank you.
One more thing, in terms of the utilities, there's still some utility assistance through CAPMC, and if we can marry some of those funds together and get a lot of this focus into the
rental fees.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the intent, right?
Perfect.
That's the intent. I've had conversations with Ms. Mendez, and clearly we'll certainly will be coordinating those efforts.
Perfect. Move to approve. Oh.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Yep.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Chairman Rogers?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Okay, next item.
6G, Board of Directors, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, Water and Natural Resources Department. Presentation and update of the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agencies.
Stephanie.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have an update for you on the allocation. I have a few slides. Mike Linden, Deputy County Counsel, has a few slides, and then Greg Young is on WebEx, and he has a few slides.
Hopefully we can get it done in 15 minutes.
We're gonna take that as a sort of a dare, see if we can do it. So we're going to discuss initial concepts of an allocation approach. Just some general reminders of the big picture. You know why we're here. SGMA was enacted to require groundwater sustainability agencies to achieve sustainability by 2040. SGMA empowers us as GSAs to find solutions, but if we're unable to show progress, we know that the state will step in. And our action should alleviate any need to pursue a court-imposed adjudication. So today, there are 4 options for demand reduction. We're going to focus on the first one, allocation, but we do have grants and are working through the other 3 issues as well. So why is an allocation important to do now? Well, we are required, according to our GSP, to reduce consumptive use of water. We have been asked by many agricultural interests for information on an allocation to help them with their near and long-term decisions. And then we are seeing trends in consumptive water use that show an upward trend, which is, of course, the opposite of what we want to see. So we are using satellite-based ET analysis. This is technology used by growers as well as water agencies, including irrigation districts and the state. It measures consumptive use of water, which is the sum of evaporation and transpiration of the plant. It's not the same thing as pumped water. It's really just what the plant needs to survive. And we talk a little bit about ETAW, which is the evapotranspiration minus the use of rainfall by the plant. Here were the water use trends we shared last time. As you know, this is not where we want to be. We want to see a trend in the opposite direction. And then here I'm just showing how the overall ET on the left compares with the ETAW, which is the water use of the plant once you subtract out the rainfall, which is shown in blue in the graph on the right. And we looked at these last time. We're showing significant changes in crops over time. We're showing row crops converting over time to permanent crops. We're also showing grapevines changing to almonds and unirrigated changing to irrigated. So what exactly is an allocation? What's on the table today and for a couple of months will be an agricultural water budget, essentially. In order to reach sustainability, the allocation or water budget will decrease over time, and there's multiple parts to this. There's how much water, which is what Greg's been working on. There's rules of participation, which Mike and I have been working on with Greg, and then there's fees that could be associated with the water that the plants are using and that's extracted. And I won't go over all of this, but just so you know, these discussions began over a year ago with our advisory committee. We did 2 very in-depth looks at what allocations might look like.
We then sort of tabled it so that we could focus on getting our groundwater sustainability plans done. And now we're back to that discussion. So we will share on Thursday with the advisory committee more numbers in terms of what an allocation might look like, and then we'll get feedback and share that with you in October. And we would like to have some sort of allocation adopted by your board by the end of the calendar year. Then next year, we could do a tremendous amount of QA/QC so that we make sure that the budgets are working as they're intended and that we've identified the right land with the right people. And then those budgets could be tied to a rate structure in 2022. In general, there are 6 principles that have come out of discussions with our advisory committee and others in terms of how to allocate. You want to be fair to all agricultural types. You want to be flexible. There's lots of research that shows the more flexible the allocation is, the better the economic benefits are. You want to give people certainty so they can make business decisions. You don't want to make anything more complicated than it needs to be. And we're trying to keep it simple. You want to be able to protect residential users, particularly disadvantaged community water supplies. And then we want to protect overlying rights. And Mike is going to talk to that next. But that's an issue where it comes up a lot, and I want you to feel well-versed and be able to engage with constituents around overlying rights. So the conceptual allocation approach is basically that the county will define the quantities of water based on conditions we described in the GSP. And then we will manage the resources consistent with those principles that you saw. And then the allocation will be available to individual growers.
This also still ties back to our transportation of water outside of county lines, right?
Yes. Yes, your board does have an ordinance that forbids extraction of groundwater moving outside of the county.
So even if there becomes a water budget and groundwater rights could only be traded within Madera County groundwater could only be traded within Madera County groundwater.
Well, so Mike is about to talk about water rights, but then that's a little bit different than the market, which is kind of a layer on top of it. But we have basically 2 types of water. One is the sustainable yield, which is available to the entire subbasin. And it's a combination of stream seepage and deep percolation of rainfall and some natural inflow from the east. And we're sharing that in the subbasin among GSAs proportionally to acreage. So we have a chunk of sustainable yield to deal with. There's also what we're calling transitional water. And that's the water that will decrease over time. It is essentially overdraft, right? This is continued mining of the groundwater in order to transition the economy. And it's accepted or acceptable to the other GSAs as they understand that this is the economic transition that we're making. So we're sort of doing it with collective permission. Okay, I'm going to shift to Mike for his legal slides.
Right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mike Linden, Deputy County Counsel. Try to get here as comfortable as possible. And we have a few slides. What we want to discuss here is really the difference between overlying groundwater rights and allocations. They're related, but they are different. The rights are much more foundational and they are much narrower. So we want to have a discussion in how the underlying right plays into the allocations. Basically, what is a water rights? Legal permission to use a reasonable amount of water for a beneficial purpose. And that would be any particular water right. Here, obviously, we're dealing primarily with overlying water rights, which are determined by property ownership. But one thing is key, I'll just go right back up. The right is in the use of the water, not for the water itself. And that's a key point in our discussion here. So A person, just because you have an overlying water right, you don't own the water. You have a permission to use a water so long as you have a beneficial purpose on your land, which irrigation for agriculture is among many beneficial purposes. So they arise from property ownership. They're not determined by the history or the frequency of the use, which is unlike other water rights. And they are generally considered to be either active or dormant. So obviously, if you're irrigating for ag on your land right now, it's active. But if it's not, if you're not doing such a thing, whether you have a reason to or not, the right is considered to be dormant, and we'll discuss that further down the line. Basically, overlying groundwater right, reasonable, beneficial use on the land. That's how it's really broken down. Reasonable, and this kind of gets to why we're here. Overdraft is considered to be per se unreasonable. There's no right to pump more than the sustainable yield to the basin. So we've been, many years in all of the sub-basins around here, and many in California, it goes beyond what is the reasonable use. And so, but remember, overlying rights are limited to reasonable use. Beneficial uses, as we've discussed, there are many beneficial uses, including irrigation, municipal, domestic. Those are the main ones that we have within our sub-basin, but there's other ones as well. And then on the land, an overlying right is a right that is appurtenant to the land itself, and thus the use is to be on that land as far as the right goes. The right itself is not transferable. So you have a right to pump water, reasonable amount, to use it on your land, which is the typical irrigation for agricultural purposes. Another thing is that overlying rights are correlative. So you have property owners similarly situated. They share an equal priority to use groundwater. And as we've discussed, the use is for what a property owner needs for the beneficial purpose. Correlative rights change over time due to changing circumstances. In times of plenty, there really is no limit as long as the use is reasonable and beneficial. So if you have somebody who needs to pump 4 acre-feet per acre for almonds, and someone else needs a certain amount for grapes, if there was no overdraft, then fine. You could pump all of that, and you'd be within your groundwater right. However, for many years around here, we've been in a state of overdraft. So when you have insufficient water, the right is limited to the reasonable share, and also the exercise of your right cannot deny others their reasonable share. So those are the basic concepts for the correlative right. One thing we want to understand about what the overlying right is for and what it does not include. We've talked about the reasonable beneficial use on the land. The overlying right doesn't include a right to sell the water you would otherwise use. Again, it's a right for use of the water, but you don't own the body or the corpus of the water. And it also doesn't include a right to obtain credit for use on other lands. The right is appurtenant to the land. And so with that in mind, we want to talk about rights in terms of the allocation that we are going to be discussing. Allocation, it's not the same as an overlying right. It's actually more broad. What SGMA allows GSAs to establish allocations and to authorize transfers of allocations within a subbasin. Mr. Young will talk more about that. That is obviously different than an overlying right, which is actually just appurtenant to the land of a particular property owner. So Ms. Agneson talked about the sustainable yield water and then the transitional water on top of that. We have these the glide path that we talked about. A GSA can actually allocate more water than a property owner would have technically an overlying right to. So this is really kind of a regulatory overlay on top of the rights framework. And so, like I say, allocations can be more broad. So to discuss it, we're going to be talking about allocations in terms of, we have irrigated lands currently, and we have also within our subbasin non-irrigated lands. And so, as you see it right now, the full allocation to all non-irrigated land is really not necessary to protect the overlying right, because the right is in the use of the water. And by definition, non-irrigated land has no current use, at least for irrigation, which is the vast majority of the water that could be used. However, that right can change if there are changed circumstances. If the land changes and there ends up being a use, then the allocation could change as well, because the right changes. Just to be clear, these last two bullet points, our allocation discussion, our proposal here for your board, it's not a subordination of a right, a subordination of a dormant right. That's different. SGMA only allows for subordination in an adjudication proceeding, which is not what we're doing here. And in fact, that's what we want to avoid. What we're doing here basically is recognizing that there are groundwater rights, they are active and they could be dormant. Allocate water, we want to allocate water where there is a need for water for a current use. When the circumstances changes, then the allocation can change, but that we just want to have you understand what our approach is. So anyway, I believe this was Mr. Young's presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions once we're through with the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me there on the dais?
Yep. Yep.
Well, good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. I'm glad to be here again in front of you, even if virtually. And so, continue moving along. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to continue with this presentation. So we're going to talk through a couple of things. First, I'm going to try and minimize the shot there. So on this conceptual allocation approach that we just talked about, there's a couple of pieces to this that we want to discuss. First, that, as you noted, Stephanie talked about sustainable yield of native groundwater and transitional water. So first, we're going to talk about the sustainable yield. So the sustainable yield of native groundwater, as we discussed, there was a quantity that was determined for the entirety of the basin. So a quantity for the Madera subbasin and a quantity for the Chowchilla subbasin. Those values were subdivided amongst the various GSAs and shared proportionally. And then in the example of the county GSAs, we are going to allocate that water among users in a conceptual allocation approach. So one of the things we're talking about is allocating the sustainable yield of native groundwater, which we'll shorthand call SY. We're considering an opt-in or an opt-out approach, where all of the lands in each of the GSAs, and again, this is the county's GSAs we're talking about, initially are in with an opportunity for a share of sustainable yield unless officially opting out. Or we might flip this and you're out unless you officially opt in. The opt-in has various opportunities and obligations. You will have access to a sustainable yield allocation. You will probably have access to a market if we do implement a market, and you will have obligations of administrative and volumetric fees. The GSA may also allow sustainable yield to carry over or used to be averaged over a few years. This is one of the details we'll continue to work on. Opting out, though, would still have access to stock water and domestic water. So we aren't talking about the concept of opting out, meaning you have no options to still use groundwater. You would still have that right, as Mr. Linden just discussed, but you would just be opting out of this allocation. Perhaps we would also have a re-entry process that you might have to make back payments or something to rejoin and opt back in to get access to a sustainable yield allocation. So what might this look like? So let's say we talk about all the landowners in the county, Madera County GSA, and then there's a subset who opt out. Then the rest of the landowners are who are going to share in some quantity of sustainable yield. So for instance, this would be the subgroup that would share their total number of acres participating, some total quantity of sustainable yield. We've determined when you make that division, we're going to end up with an allocation, annually determined allocation that's a certain number of acre feet per acre. As just a quick example, if there were 50,000 acres participating and sustainable yield for the GSA was determined to be 45,000 acre feet, each acre bucket of about 0.9 acre feet per acre allocated to it. At the parcel level, you would have, for example, parcel 1 has 90 acres, and so it would have 90 of these buckets, so it would have some sustainable yield available to the parcel. Then parcel 2, if it was 450 acres, it would have a little bit more. Same with parcel 3, it would have even more. And so this is the way you would look at it on a parcel level, is you would get the quantity of water based on a per acre allocation, but available to the entire parcel. As we discussed with the principals, one of the ideas is to create more flexibility. So we are talking about creating farming units that would allow folks to link parcels within a certain defined definitions of how those can be linked. So for instance, let's say these 3 parcels are all linked as one farming unit, then all of that sustainable yield would be available to the entirety of the farming unit, which would allow it to be used maybe all in parcel 3 or split in different ways, rather than having to be subject just to the particular parcel it was originally allocated with. So examples of farming units could be things like this, where there's several non-adjacent parcels, but they're all farmed or maybe owned by the same family, and they're all within maybe a geographic area, and they are linked as one farming unit. Another example could be several parcels that are all adjacent, and that might be a different farming unit. They may have different crops on them, different ages of crops, different other practices, but the idea is to create a little bit more flexibility for the landowner to use an allocation across multiple parcels. The GSA has not yet defined these farm unit rules, and we will continue to work with that with the advisory committee. So now let's talk a little bit about transition water. So that was just a discussion of how we might manage the sustainable yield of native groundwater. Now let's talk about the transition water, which will decrease over time to being 0. So in this case, quantifying and offering the transition water, the county GSAs will define the available quantity, likely an annually adjusted value, and it might include some rolling average, and it will again be eliminated by 2040. The key is that this quantity of water is going to absolutely link to the real-time trending conditions of groundwater levels and other sustainability indicators that were defined in the GSP. We're thinking the county GSA may offer this transition water in 2 blocks during the first 10 years, where the first block would be maybe 60 to 75% of the transition water that was determined to be available, and may be only limited to the historically irrigated parcels. Another thought is that this may be offered incrementally, so there's a tied to a fee structure where the first portion of that has one price, and then the next portion might have another price, etc. The second block would be what's remaining in the first block, plus any water that may not have been taken in the first block's offerings, and I'll explain that here in a moment. We also may limit transition water to current use only and not allow it to carry forward. So as an example, interested parties would sign up for a quantity of increment of the first offering. So it would be made available and people would say, yes, I want to be able to pump the transition water for this coming year. And then their quantity is made available and offered as a per acre quantity based upon the signups. Again, as an example calculation, we have a total number of acres that sign up as X, a total transition water is Y. We take some portion of that transition water and we end up with a proportional acre feet per acre available. So as an example, maybe transition water is 70% of the 100,000 acre feet we might think is available in that particular year. And so the first offering takes a subset of that and says, here's another chunk. So as an example here, let's look back at a farm unit where maybe it needs all the transition water. So it has its sustainable yield water, it needs all the transition water, so it's going to grab as much as it's been made available. Farm unit 2 may also need all the transition water and grabs as much as it wants. Farm unit 3 possibly doesn't need it all and only needs about half of the water to meet its crop needs. It might be growing a crop that has less consumptive use demand. So it only asks for a portion of the transition water that's available in the first offering. Again, recall that there will be fee structures tied to this, so there may be incentives to want to take less water than taking everything that might be available. Then the second offering would be what's left from the first offering. And we noticed one of those buckets was not taken in that prior example, and what was not offered in the first offering. And so then again, farming units may choose to participate in this second offering. And if everybody says we also want second offering, we may have to proportion that amount and say you may have wanted more of the second offering, but we don't have enough, and so we have to share it proportionally. And so we may have some entities that wanted much more, and they're going to have to par back, where one just wanted a little bit more of that second offering, and it still might be less than a proportional share. There's lots of ways that we could create flexibility with this kind of approach. So ultimately, the farming unit would add its transition water and its sustainable yield water together. So here's the sustainable yield that it was offered. It adds the transition water from the first block and adds the transition water from the second block. And so it has a collective quantity of water it can use within the entirety of its farming unit, however that entity feels is appropriate for its operations. And the county may use satellite-based ET analysis to quantify what was actually used along that farming unit. We'll make an adjustment for the benefits of rain that helped meet some of the ET, and then we would compare that measured ETAW, so the evapotranspiration of that applied water, to a total allocation available to that farming unit. There may also be a case where some of the landowners within the county GSAs also have access to surface water. So that would also be another consideration that would be addressed. The county GSAs will not worry about how the water is used among those linked parcels, just what's the total ETAW compared to the total allocation that was available. And then there may be fees based upon the use and the allocations, where overuse may incur higher fees, and then users may not be charged for allocations that they do not use. And so one of the things that the idea of the allocation is we think it provides a cost-effective way to use satellite ET analysis to give user feedbacks on their water use so they can manage throughout the year and look at their allocation and do some comparatives. It can definitely accompany a rate structure that addresses and ties to the different allocation buckets and allows for individual decisions, which provides the flexibility. But this allocation would be made early in the year. So let's say these decisions and offerings are made January, February of each year. So it provides the grower some layer of certainty to know what they're looking at for that particular year. And ultimately, we could layer a market on top of this approach in the long run. It does have administrative burdens. There will be a fair amount of administration to be managing all of these things and making these offers. But there also is one of the other items is there's going to need to be a fair amount of accuracy checking, especially in that first year, as Stephanie had noted there, and 2021 would be a good year to do a lot of QA/QC compared with these allocations and drawbacks. So I'm going to turn it back to Stephanie and stop sharing.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions?
Yeah. So great job with explaining what the opt-in looks like. What would the opt-out look like? Stock water, I mean, how much is that? If they're just doing it for drinking water, that's minimus or?
Yeah, the stock water could presumably be de minimis. We'd have to look at what number that would be, but presumably.
And so they opt out. They don't have to pay for any of this, but then our satellite imagery shows that they're growing, and there is.
Yep.
What do we do at that point?
So the rate structure would need to have some kind of penalty in there.
But if they opted out, they're not part of the rate structure. They're not getting a bill. Is there something outside?
They'll get a bill.
Well, so we're going to purchase a product that will allow us to measure the ET everywhere in the subbasin. So that would include the land that we think is not irrigated, just to get a read on that. And what we would need to build into the rate structure is some way of reconciling people who say that they're not irrigating, but clearly are irrigating. So it would just need to be a penalty.
Yeah, and so as the process for opting out.
Greg has a response to this.
Oh. Greg's hand is up, literally.
Yeah. So I was just going to add that when we're going to undertake an opt-in, opt-out type process, the landowners will be essentially agreeing to some sort of structure and approach. And so if they say, I am officially opting out, they will be agreeing to not use an allocation. And so if in that analysis of satellite, we see that they are growing something, they have agreed to not, and therefore it would tie to some sort of penalty approach.
Got to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think, and also during the opt-out, if they're already growing something that looks like it's in, prime production, we'd probably, is the burden on them to show that they're ripping it out or not?
Oh,
Or
if they mislead us when they're opting out.
Right. Something that we need to catch on the front end.
Thank you. I'm making a note.
That's all I have.
Okay. Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Stephanie, first of all, just a question. Are we starting our 2% glide this year or next year?
The 2% exists for this year.
Okay.
We're clearly not going to make 2% because you saw the trend in the opposite direction. So we would still be at 4% of the total reduction for next year.
It's like a roller coaster. You have to go up before you can go down, apparently. You got to get over
You got to make sure of that.
Exactly. Right.
Go ahead.
So
Greg has a response.
Okay, Greg.
Sorry, you guys know that I can't hold my tongue on some of this. The other thing that this allocation approach allows is that definition of transition water that would be determined by the GSA each year can account for those conditions. So if there was not a reduction in consumption, then the offering that would be made would need to be reduced further. So it may allow us to accelerate to catch back up. Kind of thing, because again, ultimately, we need to be showing that we are making progress in the promises we put forward in the GSP.
So next year, it's going to 2021 be a 4% reduction, and we missed the 2%. So does that mean it's going to be a 6% reduction next year?
Well, I think the way to look at that is when we look at those reductions, remember those reductions of 2% a year and then ramping to a faster percentage are about how fast we go from 100% to zero of that transition water. So that graph we were showing that was the green and dropping off. So that quantity there, we can be able to vary what that quantity is so that we are able to still be able to get to our 0 point. I think it really comes down to what are the conditions that we're seeing in the groundwater that are being measured right now. We're going to need to be tying to that information and setting the transition water available based upon those actual groundwater conditions that are present in the basin within the GSA.
So we could be actually ramping up even more than say this 2, 4, 6%. We could be going to 4, 8, 12 because this transitional water is leaving us faster than what we had, say, predicted or graphed out in the future.
It's dry.
We're using next year's water this year.
Gotcha.
Right? Is that what?
Yeah. So, okay, good. Well, wanted to, make sure that, again, it's a, this year, as you noted, the transitional use is going up, not down. And, we're seeing our water table just really drop a lot further than we had anticipated. And, it's nice having these textbook projections and things of that sort, but we really do need to get aggressive. And I just wanted to mention that, we talked about the economic transition, in terms of activity. Well, a lot of money could be coming out of growers that are, say, in a, say, MID or something else, because you have to go deeper to get, the water because of outside, say, in our GSA, more use is taking place. So it could be actually economic harm if we don't aggressively, increase. We talked about the benefits or revenues coming in but we also have to consider the cost of these wells are not cheap. These new pumps are not cheap, and it could be a huge economic burden.
Naturally, we got to stop it so it don't keep.
Right, right, and I made the point
That's our
before
goal.
that Sigma is not designed to hurt agriculture; it's designed to save agriculture. So, I think as a board here too, we've got the resolve to have your back to move this thing forward. In fact, you don't even have to be, we don't have to be in back of you. We can be in front of you to deliver this message. So that was just a little editorial. Also, why is consumptive use of the better than, say, measuring what's being pumped out of the ground? I was just kind of curious.
Oh, a couple of reasons. So consumptive use is what the plant itself is using. You can measure that fairly cheaply. We're going to see a contract come before you that's basically doing all the irrigated and unirrigated acreage for $100,000 a year. So that's really cheap. If we were to go to metered water use, it would be much more costly. And there's a fair amount of ways that people know of to mess with meters. There may also be wells that I don't know about, that environmental health doesn't know about, right? And so if we meter one well, someone may decide to drill another well and not permit it, just so that water use isn't recorded. So this is kind of, I won't say it's cheat proof, but it is much more difficult to cheat with.
Okay. Two more questions. How do we establish a baseline for each grower? Say somebody's got a vineyard, somebody's got pistachios, somebody's got almonds, somebody's got hay. So how do we establish that baseline?
So we're thinking that the principle of fairness would essentially give everybody the same amount. It would not be crop dependent. So that does mean that some people might have a little extra at the beginning.
Okay.
But that was kind of our thinking.
And what would be that, do you have any idea approximate what that initial allocation would be, say, total? Would it be 3 acre feet, 3.5 acre feet?
I don't know. Do you want to venture a guess? Those sound like pumped numbers to me, not consumptive use too. Greg, how are you feeling about throwing a number out there? His hand is up.
So we have some numbers we're putting together for the presentation of the advisory committee later this week that is looking at a potential allocation for consumptive use between the sustainable yield and the transition water of somewhere between 3/4 and a foot per acre. Sorry, that's of the sustainable yield. And then the transition water on top of that, it should get you likely over 2.5 acre feet per acre for consumptive use. Now recognize that different crops, you consume different amounts, and to go back to your point on the pumped water, people have different efficiencies in their systems as to how much you pump and how much actually gets consumed by the crop. So we are thinking that we are going to be in a position that should allow for, especially in the first year or so, the majority of crop conditions to be, to be facing minor challenges. Okay. There may be somebody who has a very, very heavy dependent orchard crop, and the idea of those farming units also allows maybe this grouping to where you could move some of your allocation from one parcel to another parcel to allow you to still fully irrigate some of those higher demand crops. But the truth of the matter is this is a challenge, and we have to start driving things down. And it's going to be difficult. And that first year that Stephanie is proposing, 2021, will allow us to start giving people some budgets and being able to understand how that budget might relate to their actual measured use, and to start kind of understanding what they're going to need to be able to put in place before things really kick off and there starts to be maybe use fees tied to it in 2022.
Yeah, and because I think we need to be prepared for not really a glide, but more of a dive in terms of transitional use, because, I think that since this thing started in 2014, there's many growers that have established orchards that are just starting to kick on right now that didn't take this thing seriously, that didn't think that, what was talked about in 2014 was actually going to occur. So I think to be prudent and to do our jobs, we can't be afraid to, again, it may be a lot more abrupt than a glide path. It's just one of those things, again, to save our basin. I don't think that we have a grasp of the seriousness of the additional acres that have gone in that are that's draining our basin. And then finally, what would we talked about volumetric fees. Are these fees going to be are they going to hurt? Are they going to be what people would pay for MID water? Are they, because if you don't make these fees hurt, you're not going to see a reduction in groundwater consumption. So we need to ensure that it's just not like I think I saw something from the state. They said we can put these fees in of like $20 an acre foot or $40 an acre foot or 50 or something. It was a joke, that's nothing.
Yeah,
and so it's like, so we have to, put some measures in that.
I'll take 1,000 of that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, fantastic work. I've thought we've needed this for almost 10 years now. I know Max and I a couple of times tried to make motions to put a moratorium on new ag wells, new converted land ag wells. We never could get it done. This is going to help do that. This conversion of grazing and row crop lands has just been so crazy. And it's just not Madera. It's all the way up and down the valley. I don't care where I drive now. They're putting it all in. And it's going to kill all of our ag. I mean, if we don't do this right now, and like Rob said, I don't think it's going to go slow. We're going to have to hammer it. Bottom line. Thank you.
Supervisor Frazier.
So it's something that Supervisor Poitras said, touched on just spark. So what if someone doesn't need their all of their sustainable yield? Everyone else was on the glide path. Does that go roll next year?
Hopefully, it'll build our.
Or it could stay in the ground. So that's the idea of rolling over your sustainable yield, and we haven't made a recommendation on that yet. But I'll make a note.
Supervisor Rodriguez. Stephanie, as far as grazing land, do they have an allotment of water rights?
So
they don't use a lot of water. Can they sell their right to neighbors?
So they don't necessarily have a right to sell it off of the grazing land. They have the right to use water on the land itself.
They can't sell their water to their neighbors.
Well, I mean, the allocation could be structured in a number of ways, but there's nothing in the law that says you can take the water that is on grazing land and sell it off. And that was kind of where Mike was going. Is that
right?
I think we got to keep
Now the people that opt out of this program, there again, they opt out of it. Can they sell their water that they're allotted to use? Can they sell it?
No. So if they opt out, they're saying, I'm not going to use sustainable yield. That's where I think Supervisor Frazier was going with the tracking of it.
Right. Got to protect that.
So if someone had grazing land, to Supervisor Rodriguez's point, then they had other land within a farm. Could they have their grazing land within the farming unit?
They could presumably link a grazing land and, I don't know, nearby pistachios where they are the owner of both of those in one, and then manage that water kind of collectively, which would mean they had access to all of the sustainable yield on
all of their, they have 1,000 acres of rangeland, 1,000 acres of orchard. They can use 2,000 acre allotment on the irrigated.
So that's kind of on the table. What we would need to do is establish some kind of hydrologic relationship. So these aren't like two areas on different
Yeah,
sides.
fractured rock, and then it's, yeah, it's not.
Right.
I think that's going to be an important thing to have, because that will allow for a reason for people to fallow land that's maybe not in as good of an area, water somewhat close. Or else we'll just never have anybody.
Thank you.
I brought up the word moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
Not to solve this.
Yep.
At some point, start doing that philosophy, start cutting back.
I think the allocation has that effect, but it doesn't leave
what I'm
you
hoping.
legally vulnerable, which the moratorium does.
But I'm hoping Max.
Yeah. Very good.
I
Okay.
think I failed on the dare to do this in 15 minutes, so I'm sorry.
It was our fault. We took the other time.
We LinkedIn'd it out. Okay.
Did a great job.
Any further questions? Okay. If not, I think we're good. Supervisor and staff reports.
I have none.
I have nothing to report.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I just gave out $100 gift cards yesterday, 3 of them, and I had my town hall. But on pending legislation, I had one, but I think I'm going to postpone it to next Tuesday. It's
Okay.
about to spot it out, so help
Great.
us.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Anything to report, Jay?
The legislature has mercifully come to a close, so you'll probably see a number of things in your emails about status of current bills, and that's the extent of my report, Chairman.
No taxes raised this session, huh? Robert, thank you.
No report, Chairman, but was public comment asked on that last item, even though it was a presentation? I don't think there was anybody online.
Yeah, I asked.
Okay, I missed
Yeah.
that. Sorry about that.
Okay. With that,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
just real quick, before you all leave, we'd like to get a picture with the board with Karen before you leave for lunch.
Oh, okay. All right. With that, this meeting will be adjourned.
Thank you, boss man.
Oh, good meeting. Huh. Well, that's because.